Hi, my name is James McNabb, and I'm the General Manager at Totem.
Hi, I'm Paul Ferris, and I'm the Director of Editorial and Creative at Totem.
Today we're going to talk about why brands should be telling their own stories. Brands have their own stories to tell, and they often stop themselves from telling them. And in my mind, that's kind of a bit of a shame. They'll leave it to the media or the PR or something else to tell, and a lot of the detail and nuance is lost. I mean, you're the expert on stories. I'm just the business guy. But at the end of the day, I think there's a story of struggle and people behind a lot of what brands are able to accomplish. And they often never tell those stories.
I would agree with that. I think there's a lot of things with inside a brand, with inside a company that an objective observer, someone who comes in and says, hey, you know what? Here's a story here. Here's this process that you guys have spent years on developing, or this product you've worked on. There's a ton of stories within it. We've seen that with Acura. We've seen that with CAA too. That you can draw out these stories. I think there's a definite benefit of having someone coming in, taking in a journalistic approach too, to say, you know, we look at this from an outside perspective, and here's why we think this makes a good story. We can tell the story of the people, we can still tell the story of the product, we can tell how you make it, and tell how it relates back to the brand. We can also take a story completely from outside, unrelated, on the surface to the company, and then find a link back. So you can do that through travel, you can do that through technology. There's a lot of different ways you can tell different stories and bring them back to the brand of the company.
I actually think that's why a lot of brands struggle with doing this well, is because they want to be able to tell their own stories. They want to be able to talk about building a rapport with their consumers and building stronger relationships and getting more engagement. And yet they ask questions like, well, why should we go and spend money to tell a story to our customers, our audience, that isn't about us? And it's a kind of marketing that is a relationship-driven marketing that's links the brand and the consumer together through a shared interest or value. And you don't get to that unless you kind of open up your avenues for the way you tell those stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also that I like to think of it as kind of the slow burn versus the hard sell, when you're going to spend the time on something that might not, on the surface, seem to have an immediate payoff. A travel story, for example, or as I said, a technology story, and or the hard sell of a listicle that says 5 things about why our company is great. Those things can work in a certain context, but I think you really need to find those threads and find those stories and pull them out. The kinds of stories we've done for Acura, for example, when we did the relaunch of the Acura customer magazine, Apex, one of the stories was about a driving trip to New Orleans. And on the surface, that's not necessarily a story that's brand specific, but you do it in a car that is an Acura vehicle, and you talk about the threads of that tradition around New Orleans jazz and how that relates back to the precision of Acura and the traditions they have built within the company. And you can tie those little threads within the story into the narrative, and also make it an entertaining experience for the reader and the viewer as well.
But, it's a good point, because it is a long-term strategy.
Yes.
Producing content and publishing it to your audience, that's a long-term game plan.